You know, our own intelligence, it's one of life's greatest creations, right? But here's the thing. It wasn't designed. It was kind of stumbled upon, tinkered into existence over billions of years. So how do you even begin to study a process that messy? Well, what if you could just rerun the experiment? Okay, let's dive into how scientists are using computers to do exactly that, to unpack the evolution of the brain.
This really is the central mystery, isn't it? The human brain, this incredibly complex machine, wasn't built from a blueprint by some grand engineer. Nope, it was cobbled together by evolution, which acts a lot more like a blind tinkerer, just trying countless things until something, anything, works a little bit better. It's a long, strange, and absolutely fascinating story.
And that's the crucial point. As the biologist Francois Jacob famously put it, evolution tinkers. It doesn't make these giant, spectacular leaps. Instead, it builds upon what's already there, finding these small incremental advantages, these stepping stones. So to understand this process, we need a tool that can actually replicate this tinkering, this massive, messy, trial-and-error search for solutions.
And that's where this amazing tool comes in, neuroevolution. The best way to think about it is like a digital magnifying glass. It lets us create entire virtual worlds, set up our own evolutionary pressures, and then just sit back and watch as digital life discovers its own solutions to really complex problems.
So, what is this thing really? At its heart, neuroevolution takes the core principles of biology, variation, selection, survival of the fittest, and it applies them to artificial neural networks. You're essentially breeding digital brains, rewarding the ones that do a task well, and using them to create the next generation.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how is this different from the deep learning we hear about all the time, like with ChatGPT? And it's a great question. Deep learning is like a student that's been given a mountain of textbooks. Its whole goal is to memorize and replicate the right answers. Neuroevolution, though, it's more like an inventor in a workshop. It doesn't get a textbook. It just gets a high-level goal, like survive, and it has to discover its own, often totally novel solutions from scratch.
The process itself is actually this beautifully simple loop. You start with a whole population of completely random digital brains. Then you test them on a task. How well do they navigate or forage or cooperate? You pick the best ones, the winners, and you let them reproduce. You mix their digital genes, throw in a little bit of random mutation, and bam, you have a brand new generation. You do that thousands, even millions of times, and pretty soon, brilliant solutions start to emerge from the chaos.
So that's the theory. But what happens when you actually let this process run wild? Let's look at some really fascinating puzzles from biology and see what these virtual experiments have actually uncovered.
First up, switching gears. Think about your own day. One moment you're carefully walking down the street, and the next you have to instantly dodge a bicycle. Your brain just flips a switch, right? How on earth does it manage that so seamlessly?
Well, in one experiment, virtual agents had to navigate a world with both food and poison. And the most successful ones didn't just blend the two behaviors together. Instead, evolution discovered something much more elegant, a single command neuron. It acted like a master switch, flipping the entire brain from a navigate carefully mode to a forage quickly mode. And what's so cool about this is that it's a perfect example of convergent evolution. This exact same solution has been found in real animals like crabs and crayfish.
Okay, so that's an individual, but what about something even trickier? How does a whole group learn to cooperate? Let's take the example of a pack of hyenas mobbing a much more powerful lion. It's a super risky, highly coordinated social maneuver. So, scientists simulated this exact scenario. At first, the behaviors were all over the place. But then, a crucial stepping stone appeared. They learned to approach the lion up to a safe distance and just wait. Once that simple behavior was established, the final piece, a synchronized all-at-once attack, could evolve right on top of it. And here's the key insight. This complex cooperation only worked when the simulation rewarded the group success, not just the individuals.
All right, for our last puzzle, let's talk about the deep connection between the mind and the body. Every animal's body is different, right? So how does evolution craft a brain that is perfectly tailored to control its own unique physical form?
Researchers tackled this by evolving virtual creatures where both the body and the brain change together. This coevolution forced the brain to become an absolute expert at controlling its specific body. The results were amazing. Depending on the physical shape that evolved, the creatures developed all these unique and efficient ways to move, walking, hopping, and in some cases, even rolling to get around.
So after running all of these incredible digital experiments, what are the big takeaways? What are the general rules that seem to govern this messy, creative, evolutionary process?
It really all comes back to this one idea. Evolution is a tinkerer. It's not planning for the future, it's just solving the problem that's right in front of it with whatever parts it has available. And these simulations give us a front-row seat to watch that process in action.
From all these experiments, a few key rules start to emerge. First, constraints actually breed creativity. Limiting resources often forces more elegant, efficient designs. Second, as we saw with the hyenas, big breakthroughs always depend on smaller stepping stones. Third, competition and cooperation, like an arms race between predator and prey, is a powerful engine for innovation. And finally, evolution and learning aren't separate things. They're a team. Evolution builds a brain that is ready to learn.
So, armed with these principles and just massive amounts of modern computing power, scientists are now aiming this digital magnifying glass at one of the biggest mysteries of all.
That's right, the origin of human language. This is maybe the ultimate test for neuroevolution. Can we actually create the right conditions in a virtual world that would lead to the spontaneous emergence of complex, symbolic communication completely from scratch?
And you know what? The initial findings are just fascinating. One simulation tested two ideas. Did language arise for complex tasks like hunting, or simpler ones like finding a mate? The result was surprising. When finding a partner was the main challenge, a simple, effective communication code evolved pretty easily. This simple code then became the stepping stone that could later be adapted for the more complex task of hunting. It's a hypothesis, but it suggests the incredible possibility that the roots of language don't lie in cold logic, but in the fundamental need to find a partner.
Neuroevolution gives us this remarkable power, the ability to rerun life's greatest experiment, to tweak the rules, and just watch what happens. It allows us to ask not just what our brains do, but why they are the way they are. And that leaves us with a really thrilling final question. If we can rerun evolution anytime we want, what are we going to discover about ourselves next?